Good afternoon to viewers in India and good morning to all those who have joined in from Belgium for this Europe overview on the pharma and life sciences sectors. I am Malini Dutt and I represent the port of Antwerp in India. Today, through our focus on pharmaceuticals, clearly a sector in which India has a huge global competitive advantage and is a factory for the world, we will hear from the best in business from both India and Europe on harnessing market opportunities, best practices, and navigating during these difficult times. There was some extremely positive news that I read not so long ago, and it was on the front page of the papers that the India pharma exports rose up by 18% to a record of 24 billion even during the pandemic year. Europe, being India's third largest export market for the region, recorded 11% growth. The future also looks very bright with commodities like the active pharmaceutical ingredients and vaccines being on the forefront. Pharmaceuticals is also a very big focus area for the Port of Antwerp as well. And we have taken and continue to take several initiatives to make our gateway very attractive to receive pharma cargo. We have a remarkably interesting program today. It's quite intensive, over 1.5 hours. But before I commence with the actual program, just one housekeeping. You may see a questions tab on your screen on the top right-hand side. I would request you to already type in your questions and keep them coming so that we can actually put it forward to the experts and hopefully we can take all your questions during the session. Another announcement is that while I know we promised that Mr. G.V. Prasad would join, he unfortunately has a very personal emergency and had to opt out, but we will not disappoint you. We thought a very good replacement for this would be to invite a man under whose leadership this country will see more vaccine availability as soon as hopefully end of May. And hence we bring to you the person that I'm referring to, Mr. Deepak Sapra. He's the Chief Executive Officer for Pharmaceutical Services and API Business at Dr. Reddy's Laboratories. He is leading the COVID initiatives at Dr. Reddy's, both linked to bringing the much needed Sputnik vaccine to India and the Remdesivir drug to India as well. Mr. Deepak joined Dr. Reddy's in 2003 from IIM Bangalore and has worked in various roles including marketing, sales, business development and portfolio covering most of the major markets around the world. He has led important projects on several key organizational initiatives around market opening, external collaborations and building new businesses. So who's not looking for inspiration today? And on that note, I would like to invite Mr. Sapra on stage. Mr. Sapra, I for one am definitely looking for some inspiration. Please share your pep talk with us.
Thank you so much, Malini. It's a pleasure to be connected with this forum and very happy to be a part of it. First of all, I just want to share that Mr. Prasad sends his regards. As you mentioned, he had a personal family emergency on account of which he could not attend, but I'll try my best to represent some of the thoughts that he wanted to share with the group and also share some of the experiences that we at Dr. Reddy's have been having in the pharmaceutical space, both on the API side, the formulation side, as well as on the vaccines. So do you want me to just talk for a few minutes because there are a few thoughts I wanted to share and then we can move to the next part of the discussion. Is that how you want to do it, Malini?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. So maybe I'll take about 7 to 8 minutes, just talking about four key areas. One is a little bit about the Indian pharmaceutical industry, just a small walk through how it has evolved over the past 4 or 5 decades. Then specifically, I'll talk about Dr. Reddy's and Europe, the importance of Europe as a market for us, and from that one could extrapolate in terms of the relevance of Europe to Indian pharmaceutical companies and where we potentially see opportunities. And next, I would like to talk about the COVID situation and what Dr. Reddy's has been doing in the COVID situation and what some of the other Indian pharmaceutical companies have been doing to be a part of the solution. So that's broadly what I would want to talk about. So let me start by actually a little bit of historical context on the Indian pharmaceutical industry. So as you know, India was a very import dependent country as far as pharmaceuticals were concerned till the early 70s. Then the pharmaceutical sector started opening up on account of certain government policies. And in the 1980s, the Indian pharmaceutical industry really started becoming a key player in fine chemicals and intermediates and bringing them to Europe and to several other countries around the world. Uh, in the late 90s, in the early 2000s, it also started coming into formulations and became a large supplier of formulations to different countries in the world, and slowly started getting into Europe as well. 2005 onwards, a lot of Indian companies actually got into Europe from a front-ending perspective. Dr. Reddy's acquired a company by the name Beta Farm, which was at that point in time the fourth largest pharmaceutical company in Germany. Then there are other Indian companies which made acquisitions as well, which made collaborations with European companies and really established a foothold. Most of the companies had this foothold either in Germany or in the UK. Some of them established a foothold in Switzerland and then started expanding into the rest of the continent. Now, in addition to the API and formulations, Indian pharmaceutical companies also work very hard towards becoming a partner for some of the originator companies who are based out of Europe. These are both big pharma as well as smaller biotechs, and a lot of companies, Dr. Reddy's, Dishman, Piramal, Divi's, were not just having capabilities to manufacture in India, but also serve as very, very important service delivery partners for companies in the EU. So companies like Novartis, companies like Roche, companies like AstraZeneca, many of these companies really look to India as a very important partner in their discovery programs, in their development programs, and in their manufacturing programs. Then somewhere around the first decade of the 21st century, slowly Indian companies started coming into Europe on biosimilars. And this has expanded now to include a large number of biosimilars which are available from India in different parts of Europe. And this was followed by a move into specialty. A number of specialty pharmaceutical products from India augment the generic products which are available. And today, if you look at the whole European pharmaceutical market, a very large proportion of the entire value chain has some sort of an India connection. Now, starting from fine chemicals to intermediates to APIs to generic pharmaceuticals to biosimilars, I think all of this really is a very important aspect of the business that Indian companies do in Europe. Now, I'll talk a little bit about what Dr. Reddy's is doing in Europe. Our journey in Europe started in the year 1987, so many, many years ago, with the exports of an API by the name ibuprofen. It's an API which many of us consume. It's a painkiller. And Dr. Reddy's at that point of time became one of the very first Indian companies to export APIs into Europe. Before that, it was a reverse situation and APIs from Europe used to come into India. So then after that, we also started getting into certain other categories of products such as fluoroquinolones, which are anti-infectives like ciprofloxacin, norfloxacin. These kind of products started going into Europe in a big way and becoming an important part of the prescriptions that were getting generated in the EU. Then in the year 2008, Dr. Reddy's acquired a facility owned by Dow Pharma in the UK. And we also acquired a research facility in Cambridge in the UK in the same year. And we started offering our research and manufacturing services to originator companies. Now, today we have a manufacturing footprint in the EU. We have an R&D footprint in the Netherlands, in a place called Leiden in the Bioscience Park. We have a very large setup in Augsburg in Germany, and we have our European headquarters in Basel in Switzerland. In addition to this, we also have operations in France, Spain, and Italy. We have operations in Romania, and we are looking at increasing the breadth of our direct presence in several other countries in the continent to become about 13, to cover about 13 countries in the next 2 to 3 years. We also work very closely with Belgium. There are a lot of pharmaceutical companies in Belgium, UCB, Johnson & Johnson, who do a significant amount of their manufacturing in Belgium. We partner with them on several aspects of their value chain and are providers of service both on the API side as well as on the formulation side with them. We've also collaborated and partnered with UCB in India. UCB had a very large portfolio of products in India. So we partnered with them and we got that portfolio of products which are now taken to the market and distributed by Dr. Reddy's in India. So net, I think there's a lot that's going on between Dr. Reddy's and Europe. And I think this is one of the most important aspects of our geographical outreach and also uh, about our future strategy. We look at generics as the bread and butter for our presence in Europe. We look at APIs as a very, very important aspect of our play in Europe in terms of collaborating with a lot of companies in the EU and offering them world-class APIs manufactured in India at extremely affordable cost with very high quality. So that's what we are doing on the generic side. We are also working on the new chemical entity side. We are partnering with quite a few companies in the EU and also in Belgium towards supporting them in their discovery programs and in their development programs for new chemical entities. And I think this combination of products and services is something which we are looking to strengthen over a period of time and make it one of the most important drivers of growth for Dr. Reddy's and similarly for the Indian pharmaceutical industry. So that was the second part which I just wanted to share with you. Now, thirdly, I want to talk a little bit about the COVID situation. As you know, this has impacted everyone in a very, very big way. Countries have gone through different phases. India is currently in the midst of a very, very strong second wave. Every day, we're getting more than 300,000 people infected and testing positive on COVID. And these numbers are the highest that have ever been in any country in the world from the start of the pandemic. So since the time this started, there have been 2 or 3 core priorities that we've had as a company. One is, of course, to make sure that everybody who's a part of the organization, everybody who's associated with the organization stays safe and is completely taken care of from a personal health standpoint. That has been our priority number one. Priority number two has been to make sure that the medicines that are required for people around the world are available wherever needed and whenever needed. The EU has been a very important aspect of this, both from the standpoint of supply as well as putting products into the EU. So there is a lot of antibiotics from our side, a lot of fluoroquinolones, a lot of products on oncology, a lot of products on respiratory, a lot of products on cardiovasculars, which are getting manufactured here and are coming into the EU. And that has been a key focus, that how do we make sure that the drugs, wherever they're required, are made available and we continue our operations in an uninterrupted manner to bring them to patients around the world. So that's been the second priority. And the third has been about being a part of the solution on COVID. When COVID started, we really didn't have much of a presence on antivirals or on anti-infectives, but we said this is probably one of the largest healthcare crises that the world is seeing. This is one of the times when we need to step up to be a part of the solution and to contribute in a meaningful manner to the way things are ongoing. So what we did was we sat down to create a portfolio of drugs very, very quickly through a combination of 2 approaches. Approach number one, internal development, internal R&D, and internal manufacturing, and then taking it to different countries around the world. And approach number two, partnering with those who are already progressed, partnering with those who had medicines which could potentially represent a solution for COVID, and then taking them to different parts of the world. So in this context, we partnered with companies like Gilead to bring Remdesivir to India and 127 other countries around the world. We partnered with Fujifilm in Japan to bring Favipiravir, which is an oral antiviral drug, to different countries. It is also under clinical trials in various parts of the world. And we expect that if the clinical results are good, we should be able to bring it to market in the EU and in the US as well. We are currently working on a vaccine called the Sputnik V, on which we have partnered with Russia, the Gamaleya Institute in Russia, which is a very old institute in terms of epidemiology, established in 1891, is the inventor of the Sputnik V vaccine. They are represented through Russia Direct Investment Fund, and we partnered with them to bring Sputnik into India. So we carried out clinical trials. We went through the regulatory process, and we received the approval on this on the 12th of April. And we expect Sputnik to be India's third vaccine getting launched in the May-June timeframe. So that is what we are expecting to do on COVID. As we speak, we are working on an additional portfolio of 7 to 8 products which are relevant for COVID, either as antivirals or as supportive care or as nutritional products, which will really help in the overall management of COVID and which will help people afflicted with COVID to have a faster path to recovery. So those are some things which I wanted to share with you. These have been very, very testing times, but in these testing times, we have relished the challenge. We have relished the opportunity to be a part of the solution to create impact on a large number of people. And we are doing our best every single day to work on the 3 priorities that I outlined: keeping our people safe, making sure that the medicines we regularly make are available to patients all around the world in an uninterrupted manner. And as far as COVID is concerned, being a very, very meaningful part of the overall solution. So that's what I wanted to share, Malini. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to share my thoughts. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Safra. I mean, who didn't want to hear all of that, given that this has been the discussion of the hour for the past couple of days. Thank you so much for those words, and I'm sure there'll be questions for you as well. Moving on, I would now like to introduce our next speaker. As promised, we have a session on the Europe market opportunities and trends, and also a bit on the regulatory aspects, given that aside of COVID, there's been other things that have been happening in the world, like Brexit, which also will have an impact on the EU-UK trade relationship. I would like to invite our next speaker, Mr. David Gehring. He's the Communications Director of Pharma.be, one of the leading pharmaceutical industry associations of Europe. David Gehring joined Pharma.be in October 2020, and in his position of Communications Director, he is part of the leadership team of the Federation of the Innovative Biopharmaceutical Industry in Belgium. He started his career at the European Commission before switching to commercial environments. He has extensive expertise across managerial positions within the TUI group. He has served as Ryanair's key spokesperson in Benelux and Portugal for many years, and he was commercial director, PR and communications of Brussels South Charleroi Airport during its most important growth period. David, excited to hear about your part. So over to you now.
Thank you, Malini. Thank you very much. Welcome to you all. Thanks for having us. I'm just going to explain who we are, what we do, and how we could be interesting maybe for you to help you within Europe, within Belgium. Could I see the presentation, please? Thank you. So Pharma.be, we are an association of 130 pharmaceutical companies. Next slide, please. Including the big ones, the smaller ones. But all these companies have in common that they have a huge part of the medicines available on the market in their portfolio. They also have, a vast majority has orphan drugs in their portfolio, and 90% of all our members focus on human health, although 10% is also focusing on animal health. Next slide, please. So this is Belgium, what you see to your right, and all those different dots with colors on the map are one way or another linked to the presence of pharmaceutical industry in Belgium, or elements that are important to the industry. So there's not only a lot of headquarters, but more importantly, there is a huge amount of research and development facilities privately owned by pharmaceutical companies within Belgian territory, but also universities and hospitals, which are essential to work together on these research and development processes. So this is one of the strong points of Belgium, next to very interesting incentives from the government. And thirdly, very important, central position within Europe with excellent transportation elements, such as the Port of Antwerp, which is with the only port within Belgium that has such great facilities to treat pharmaceutical products. And there's 2 airports which are certified to treat the pharmaceutical products as well. Next slide, please. Now, the Belgian pharmaceutical sector. Next slide. There is a lot going on in Belgium. Last year we had 1 patent application per day. Today that is even more, and it keeps on increasing for the last 5 to 6 years, meaning that Belgium in this particular situation is very important, and that is also shown by the presence of research and development. Belgium is also important in terms of exports, imports as well, but export. The total Belgian export is related to medicines and vaccines, meaning that there is a lot of money involved. The total export grew rapidly and is now hitting the 15 million euros mark. Belgium, as I said, is very well situated for transport, export, and import, and that's why there is an important situation for Belgium here on the export market, although the import is important as well. And then meaning that if you have this great position in export and distribution of medicines and vaccines, it is also great to see that the research and development ties in perfectly in this. So Belgium is really proud to be always in the top 3 of clinical trials developers in Europe. And where is this all taking place? Well, in different areas, obviously, cancer, the nervous system, the immune system, and pediatric studies, among others. So a lot is going on the Belgian territory, and all this is due to not only good infrastructure, but especially due to all this collaboration between the different parties. Now, Belgium, its situation within Europe and Brexit, as I told you before, Belgium is well situated geographically, but Belgium is also an important partner to the UK. And as you know, Brexit has taken place, meaning that the business has become a bit more complex, yes, in terms of export to the UK, in terms of export to Ireland through the UK. So this is by road, by truck, or in terms of import from the UK, but many opportunities still remain. I'll just take you through some of the elements that you probably already know, or if you don't know, well, then I hope it's helpful for you, and a few suggestions to help you further. So the UK has left the European Union as of the 31st of January last year, officially, and it has an impact on the transport of goods, people, services, and capital. Since the 1st of January of this year, the UK is no longer part of the customs union, meaning that it has an impact on transport and on exportation towards the UK. Individual treaties need to be closed between countries if you want to do business with the UK. Now, there's a few simple tips and tricks that you should keep in mind. You should, for example, always check that your transporter is compliant, make the packaging requirements suitable for the UK. They might be different than those for the European Union. Ensure your goods. This is what you always should do, I think. And if you're going to Ireland and you bring it through the UK by a truck, then you should maybe do it in a sealed truck to make sure that you don't get any difficulties within UK territory. Now, I'm not going into huge detail on UK legislation. It's just important, I think, to know that import licenses can only be issued to holders of a valid domestic license or registration. Importers must register to a national drugs control system. Individual import licenses are required every time a shipment takes place, and there's more do's and don'ts that you have to know. Basically, to put it really simple, is that there is a quite an important amount of steps to take before you get to import into the UK, and then there's another whole bunch of steps to take when you start bringing in products from the border of the UK. Now, to see clear in this, we as an association can of course help you with this, but probably the best information site for this, the source of information for you, might be the website of the Federal Service of Economy of the Kingdom of Belgium. You can see the website over there. They also have a very good information exchange by email. You can see the email number there. There's a call center. You will find all this information on their website. If you have any problems with it, please don't hesitate to reach out to us, and we will be more than happy to help you get the information you need. Because Pharma.be, the association, is not only at the service of its members in all these elements of expertise. So we're going from clinical trials to legal advice, economics, etc. But we are also building bridges towards you, to people who are looking to do business with Belgian partners within the EU. So therefore, don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can find us on the social media and our website, of course. Thank you very much for your attention. Looking forward to your questions afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you so much, David. It's always nice to know from the associations themselves in Europe as to how they can help Indian customers from here if they want to do business in Europe. No interaction organized by the Port of Antwerp is ever over until we discuss about the topic of supply chain, and more so the efficiency in supply chain. So our next speaker will share some best practices in supply chain. I met this dynamic lady, Anne Dawn, head of business line healthcare at Katunasi a few years ago, where she spoke about interesting concepts applicable to the pharma supply chain. Anne started her career at Becton Dickinson as member of EMEA, Demand and Supply Network Planning Team, and she served that place for over 8 years. Additionally, she became, with BD University, the leading forecasting system trainer, working closely with all product managers within this region in order to improve forecast accuracy. She decided to make the switch towards the solution provider side, but never left the healthcare and life sciences vertical. 11 years ago, she was offered the opportunity to develop and roll out a global strategy for the sector of personal care, healthcare, and life sciences at Katunasi. She develops tailor-made solutions for each individual customer or project from this organization. And I've been personally involved with Anne. She has churned out some good solutions for Indian customers as well. So Anne, if we can just move on to the next slide. I think we discussed with Anne when we had met that today she would share some good case studies so that it's interesting for the audience as well. And I'd like you to take over, Anne, and just give us some insights on practical experience of the supply chain operations.
Thank you, Malini, and thank you for the opportunity to be in this forum today. As you just mentioned, I will share some reference cases without mentioning our customers' names, reference cases which might be useful for all of you. But maybe first a small word on our company, Katunasi, who we are and what we are doing. We are a family-owned warehousing and value-adding services company, which exists for over 165 years. Our headquarters is in Antwerp, Port Antwerp related. And we are nowadays already present in 33 countries and 181 multi-customer platforms. Globally, we cover about 5 million warehouse space, and we only focus on a limited number of sectors. And what I would like to add here as well is that we focus on a limited number of customers within that sector as well. We really go for long-term contracts with our existing customers. Now, as a picture normally says more than a million words, I would even like to go a bit further, and I would like to share a video which will tell you more than all the things I could possibly tell you today. It will give you an impression of our facility in the Port of Antwerp. So thank you. I hope this virtual tour gives you a bit of an insight of how our operations and buildings look like. But what I would like to lead you through is now a few concepts that we have developed over the years with our customers, and that all have the goal to improve cost and service levels. The first reference case is a company that has its export, import, and storage platform at Katoenassie within the port of Antwerp. This company is a very large volume human health company with production both in Europe and overseas. So the inbounds into our platform are all by road, air, and sea. Before we were consolidating this, they had a local country DC set up with warehouses mostly close to plants, and all these plants and DCs were individually exporting and importing. It was all separate till 2015. The operation is, of course, GDP licensed, and all the products are stored in 15 to 25 degrees centigrade. This company does not have 2 to 8 products. Now, what we are operating for them is an operation of 6,000 square meters storage and 120,000 pallets throughput per year. In Antwerp, we consolidate all their EU export shipments, regardless if they come from their plants in Sweden, Italy, France, Germany, or Belgium. We store all their products under quarantine, and the goods that go to the same destination can leave with the same container or air shipment. In Antwerp, we also consolidate all their containers or air freight coming in from out of Europe. And we store these temporarily until they are needed in the local country DCs, where we can ship them with consolidated truckloads. Now, the advantages from an export consolidation hub point of view is that, of course, instead of shipping out of all these individual European countries separately, we can consolidate containers, the filling rate will get higher, and also the frequency of the shipments will go quicker into the destination. And overall, when you save on number of containers or air freight shipment, the overall cost is lower. Now, also from a storage point of view, it is a very positive point, because if you bring all these export goods, regardless the destination and the mode of transport, to this export hub, you can consolidate more full truckloads into that hub. And then the inbound trucking and temporary storage is done under a quarantine status, which is, of course, safeguarded by a validated WMS. This allows that you have less storage required at plant level, which is mostly very scarce and expensive, and you will have a time gain. If you already ship under quarantine towards the export hub, you win several weeks, and that gives you more option to ship more shipments via ocean versus air. From an import point of view, there's also similar advantages. Of course, also the number of shipments into Europe, which are coming in consolidated in containers for the European market, will also lead to higher filling rates, less container, and lower overall costs. The same applies for the central storage hub. When you ship all these shipments to a central European hub, this also allows you to have a central safety stock for the European market. And it allows you to replenish the European local country warehouses at the right time with the right products in consolidated outbound shipments by road. Now, if we combine the advantages of a consolidated import and export hub, you can also see that this hub can at the same time be your LDC or regional DC for the nearby countries to Belgium. It can be delivering pick and pack activities to the Benelux, France, Germany, and UK out of Belgium. But also this hub, when you centralize all these shipments from and to Europe, This can also function as a business continuity plan hub because you will duplicate some stock. And then, of course, a very important point, which when you focus on warehousing and value-adding services as a core business, is the carrier neutrality. This will allow our customers at all times to select the best forwarder and carrier per lane. So if a forwarder or a carrier is not performing very well from a cost or service level aspect, and this one is not linked to your warehouse, you can easily change carrier or forwarder, which is a big plus in this industry. A second example and reference case is a customer who wanted to serve the European market with limited hubs. So before, this sector-leading company in the animal health had 7 hubs to cover the European market. So nearly in each European country, there was a hub. Now they consolidated this in 3 regional DC hubs, 1 Germany and Eastern Europe, 1 Southern Europe, and 1 Central Europe, plus export shipments. They both have production in Europe and overseas. Katunasi manages this Central European RDC hub and the export activities. And this company both operates in 2 to 8 and 15 to 25 degrees storage. We store about 15,000 pallets for them in the port of Antwerp. Out of this facility, we cover all direct deliveries to vets and distributors in the Benelux, France, and UK, and all export shipments ex-Europe with air and ocean. What savings came out of this RDC concept is, of course, when you store in less countries, you have a less overall stock level for the European market. And you don't need a safety stock capacity flexibility for all these separate countries, but one consolidated one. The lower inbound transportation costs. Of course, if you have to perform inbounds to less hubs, of course, you can optimize your truckloads for European manufacturing and your container and consolidated air shipments for inbound shipments from out of Europe. A conditio sine qua non for this is that the outbound shipment cost has to stay equal and also the service level linked to it. So it takes a lot of analysis if we start a project to safeguard these 2 things, cost and service level. And then again, the specific advantage that you can at all times change a carrier and forwarder. The indirect savings that came out of this RDC concept are that you have less partners to communicate with and to control from a KPI reporting and EDI setup point of view. And also from a quality aspect, which is very important, there are less audits to perform and less quality technical agreements to execute and follow up. And then the last reference case I would like to mention is a customer who has 1 central import plus European hub, out of which he delivers all customers directly. This company is a large volume medical consumable company, and the production is only overseas, both in US and Asia. The imports are 100% ocean freight. And they had already a Central European distribution center for many years in the Netherlands, the east of the Netherlands. And their products are temperature monitored, not controlled, because it's medical devices. Now they decided in 2013 to bring their EDC from the Netherlands to the port of Antwerp. We operate an operation of 22,000 pallet storage, and we handle about 15 containers of trucks per day. At some days, it's even higher. Now, all these containers arrive loose loaded, and we perform a lot of value-adding services, mainly repacking for this company. All the pick and pack activities for direct deliveries to hospitals and distributors in Europe are performed out of this warehouse in the port of Antwerp. Of course, other than with the pharmaceutical industry, the medical device industry with these large volume consumable allow a bit longer lead times to the market. And that's why they can actually do with one central European warehouse. Their lead times go from 24 to 72 hours. The advantages they discovered when switching to Antwerp was a significant decrease of inbound transportation cost, both from a CO2 aspect and from a cost aspect. It was very positive because they actually, by switching to the Port of Antwerp location, they only had to travel 15 kilometers with the inbound containers versus 200 kilometers before. Also, Antwerp was a very more Central Europe location compared to the eastern part of the Netherlands. There was a shorter overall time to market because Belgium is located in the middle of France and Germany, and it's also very well located for UK shipments. During this contractual period, they closed the UK warehouse and they have integrated everything into Antwerp. Overall, they have lower costs by this. And again, I want to mention the carrier neutrality, which has saved for this company a lot during the years we are operating for them, because they have switched several times forwarder and carrier. Now, as a conclusion, I would say when you have significant import or export flows into or out of Europe, it's a very good idea to centralize them in a European storage hub within the Port of Antwerp. Direct deliveries are possible to a number of European customers, so you can use this hub both as an inbound and outbound hub into or out of Europe, but also as a last mile or regional distribution hub. Or you can replenish your local country hubs out of this central hub. And then for urgent shipments, we are of course close to Amsterdam and the Brussels airports, and of course also Liège airport. And last but not least, as I mentioned several times, we are carrier and forwarder neutral, where you can win a lot of service and cost. That was my last slide. For any more questions or comments, you can contact me on these details.
Thank you, Anne. I hope the audience have taken note of your conclusions, because there are several possibilities with Cartoonasi and at the Port of Antwerp. So this brings me to the final speaker for today, who is our very own life science and health expert, Tineke van Woerden. And I won't, we are very humble people at the Port of Antwerp, so I won't read out her bio. Pharma and vaccine gateway is what the Port of Antwerp is. And as this becomes a talk of the town in most parts of the world, we have also adapted our gateway in many ways to position ourselves as the most reliable partner for your exports. So Tineke, before I move to the question answer session, please share some striking features of our initiatives that we have undertaken under pharma and life sciences sector.
Well, yes, thank you, Malini. Maybe we can first go on to some of the slides. Like indeed Malini already told, I am Tineke van Woerden and I work within the Port Authority as an account manager, shippers and forwarders. Maybe you can see on my background that we in Belgium are still working from home, or most of the people, as this is one of the measurements due to the COVID situation. And yes, COVID and its measurements are still dominating the world. However, the Port of Antwerp is open and has always been open during these times. We, together with the port operators, kept receiving incoming and outgoing cargo, and we still receive the biggest container vessels in the world. And we handle them with the same care as always, of course, with now the COVID-19 measurements in place. After the speaking slots of today, I don't think I have to explain a lot more in detail why Belgium is an important hotspot for the pharma and life science and healthcare industry. but I can explain you why it's so close to the Port of Antwerp's heart. But then it's important first to explain you a bit about our company, Port of Antwerp Authority. But of course, I will keep it very short here. And but it is very important to say that the Port of Antwerp Authority has many roles to play. We are, as you can see on the slide, a landlord, a regulator, an operator, and a community builder. And just to explain you, we are an operator of the infrastructure, like the bridges and the locks inside of the port. But we're also a landlord because of the majority of the companies inside the port area have the land in concession. And these companies that have the land in concessions are mostly the private operators. But also very much we are a community builder. And this is actually a role that me and Ms. Malini are really taking up. We are actually the funnel between the Port Authority and our clients or potential clients, and that are located inside or even outside the port. So very important to say here that we go a lot further than only looking at our port platform, but we really see our port platform as a chain in that total supply chain. And in order to make sure that great cooperations can be set up, we as Port Authority see ourselves as the in-between party that connects the port to the rest of the supply chain. I will explain this a bit later, actually by a good example, specifically for the life science and healthcare sector. So I think it's really important to explain to you what is actually in it for you. What is the Port of Antwerp platform and what can it offer towards its pharma and life science and healthcare players? What is already available today at our port platform is that, and as already emphasized by Ambond from Katoenase, is that we are really in the center of Europe. And we have a unique inland position which can help you reduce land, reducing land kilometers. Besides the very important warehouse activities that Katoenase explained you all about, inside the port area, there are different operators, and they can help you with taking good care of your pharma and life science and healthcare goods. The logistics service providers inside the port area are actually, like already informed, Katoenase, but you have also Houston Logistics and DSV. These operators have today more than 63,000 square meters of GDP certified warehouses, offering temperature-controlled storage inside the port area. And all of the operators have the possibility to grow their volumes, both within the requirements of the GDP licensing or not. Also important to emphasize here that the Port of Antwerp, we have more than 8,000 reefer plugs available, making sure that your reefer containers can be plugged in as soon as they arrive at the quay. But we should look further, of course, than that, because within the triangle, Port of Antwerp, Brussels Airlines, and Liège Airport, you can see the Belgian map. That on the Belgian map, you can see that the majority of the forwarders active in the life science and healthcare sector are represented with warehouses that are both active in distributing the air freight and in the sea freight. It is actually one of our advantages that shifts in demands can easily be taken care of because of the short distance between the Port of Antwerp and, for instance, Brussels Airport. Brussels Airport, as you maybe know, is a very important air freight hub when it comes to pharma products. They were actually the first GDP certified airport in the world. And just to inform you on the scale of this map, Brussels Airports and Port of Antwerp, that is only a truck drive away of 1 hour from each other. So next to the platform that we have today available, we want to make sure that we keep ahead when it comes to the life science and healthcare sector and its logistic requirements. We noticed more than 3 years ago that good distribution practice is a major thing for the life science and healthcare business when talking about logistics. Nowadays, you have different GDP certificates in trucking, warehousing, and in the air freight business. But yet, in the maritime business, a GDP certificate does not yet exist. Although we notice already for several years that a major shift is going on from air to sea freight. And then, of course, there comes our community builder role in place, where we have put together the different stakeholders active in the maritime life science and healthcare sector, together with important players that do have the knowledge of logistics in both air and sea freight, and the know-how how to work with GDP requirements. So like you can see on the slide, the stakeholders were the carriers, the container terminals, and the empty depots who had to do the operational changes, and also the forwarders, the producers, and the warehouses who were already GDP or GMP certified and who could give feedback by giving the best practices and sharing actually their needs. So Port of Antwerp Authority isn't really a node in this supply chain, but we function here as a neutral coordinating party and that community builder. And from the start of the project, I really have to say, and I felt that the big pharma companies, actually the shippers, really were eager to make sure that this project would become a success. So going to the next slide. So after 3 years, and at the end of last year, we were very proud to say that because of the hard work and the great collaboration of all the stakeholders in the supply chain, there is now a maritime guideline for reefer containers, specifically for that life science, healthcare, pharma sector. The guideline has about 32 pages where it is outlined how companies should act in order to be compliant or in compliance with GDP. And also it contains a questionnaire of about 300 questions for your pre-auditing or auditing ends. In the guidelines, good practices are mapped out and what you should do at the critical points. So, for example, you have the plug-in and plug-out times on board of the vessel and also on the terminals. Also, information on the PTI and of the reefer containers is included in the guideline, and educational programs or how to set them up for the personnel involved in the supply chain for the maritime business. But for us, it doesn't stop here, of course, because with the guidelines in place, we are actually the first maritime port in the world who acts on the sector's needs, but we also want to make sure that we will keep ahead. This by bringing together this expertise group further and to discuss how the operations can further improve. So for this year to come, we want to make sure that life science and healthcare in the world knows that our port platform does understand the needs of the life science and healthcare sector when it comes to handling their products and containers. But our aim is also as well to make sure that a GDP certificate for reefer container shipments comes in place. This is, of course, a job to be done together with independent auditing companies. And as soon as the certificate comes in place, we want to expand our knowledge to other maritime ports so that your supply chain can be set up completely GDP certified. So with the knowledge and the expertise from Port of Antwerp and our stakeholders we have today, we drew actually the attention of UNICEF in terms of the project that they're having of distributing the COVID-19 vaccine and beyond. So like you probably know, UNICEF is responsible for logistics when it comes to transporting the COVID-19 vaccine and the plus equipment to the less developed countries. They asked us if we could share our knowledge in this field, and together with several partners, we are discussing possible answers to the challenges of the operations that logistics will face. So we, as Port of Antwerp, are ready to share our knowledge, our network, and our GDP-compliant infrastructure to support the organizations such as UNICEF and COVAX. This to ensure a worldwide access of the vaccines also to the less developed countries. But maybe now you are wondering how we can help you when it comes to shifting your logistics through Port of Antwerp. So Anne already explained, but maybe I can explain it from my part for Port of Antwerp. So first, and these are just a few examples. First, but very important, is that we can put you in contact with our complete port platform and to all its relevant private operators, also some outside of the Port of Antwerp area. But we can set up also and organize together with you roundtable discussions with the different stakeholders on board. So for instance, the different shipping lines and the terminal operators and so on. We can also invite you to our port so you can see for yourselves how we operate at our port platform. This by bringing visits on the container terminals, to the GDP certified warehouses, and so on. But of course, still for the moment, keeping in mind a bit the safety measures around the COVID-19 situation. So as you can see, we are very happy to help you further. And if you have further questions for the moment, don't hesitate to put them on the chat box. But also afterwards, me and Malini are very keen to help you further, and we are at your disposal. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tinaka. And now it's time for questions. And I already see there were 2 questions in the question box which have been answered. So thank you for that. But do keep your questions coming as our experts are around to answer it. And as Tinaka said that, if you're shy to ask questions, we'll definitely send you the recording, and you can always reach out to us and we'll have your questions answered. Can I please request our speakers to all come on stage, please? While I wait for some questions in the box. Okay, maybe I have a question, and I'll start with the lady first. Anne, since I've worked extensively with you, and we have a group of Indian pharma companies as well as logistics service providers who have joined, you have specified these nice cases, 3 cases that you mentioned. And one common thing that I saw is you spoke about the concept of a Europe hub. So are you in a position to do some sort of pilot studies? For example, if an Indian company would give you their volumes for Europe and maybe other international geographies, for example, Africa and North America, from Europe onward, are you in a position to, maybe accumulate those volumes and come up with how Katunasi can be a very cost-effective service provider with the Europe hub concept? Is that something you can commercially work out for the Indian organizations as a pilot case?
Definitely. I don't know if you hear me.
Yes, we hear you.
Okay. Definitely. This is how we work for all our customers and projects. We do a severe study of all the data and the flows as is, and we will try to orchestrate the future to be that is the best possible scenario for the customers. So, for example, if we speak about an export hub, like one in the references that I spoke about, a reference hub of a company that produces in Europe and exports to multiple destinations, it was 67 destinations, we have calculated, for example, does this company need one European export hub, or do they need several? Where is the production mainly, in the south of Europe or in the north of Europe? And does it make sense to truck all the shipments down to 1 or down to 2 locations to export. So we calculated for that project, for example, 7 different total cost scenarios before we actually proposed the best possible scenario for them. So yes, we do a lot of consultancy before we actually come into a final proposal. And that would not be different for Indian companies that would like to set up a hub in Europe.
Thanks, Anne. I think the message is clear. David, one of the aspects of the community builder role of the Port of Antwerp is that we also expose our network here to the best minds in Europe. And like today, we have got the representative, a leadership representative from pharma.be. Earlier, we had also got Business Europe. Even from the chemical side, we've got a speaker from Essentia previously for a chemical event that we have organized. What I wanted to specifically ask you is how can our Indian companies leverage your presence, the presence of your organization, if they were to look at Europe market opportunities? How can you specifically be of help?
Yes, well, what is not highly emphasized on our presentation is the know-how, the knowledge and the expertise we have inside of pharma.be. So there is a whole team of approximately 35 people who are experts on every specific element of medicines and pharmaceutical products. So it is also a big help for companies or partners. It's not only, we do not only have our members, which are pharmaceutical companies, but there's also companies or organizations who are interested in having information or having guidance in some really specific topics related to medicines and pharmaceutical products. And that is where our experts can really play a role and inform people, guide them, put them in contact with the right persons, or just give them the elements they need to make their decisions on that. So I would invite everybody to have a look at our website to have an idea of the expertise that is available. And if people from India or from another country are interested in tying those lines between pharmaceutical companies in Belgium and their own people, they can become a partner or contact us whenever they need to get some specific information. We will be more than happy to help them with that.
Thank you, David. There's a question, and I think possibly Tinaka, you should take it because it's Port of Antwerp specific. Does the new digitized certified pickup for import containers in the Port of Antwerp also apply to pharmaceutical products? And what is the advantage for the BCOs?
Well, yes, of course. Since we are mainly talking about containers here, it does apply that digital certified pickup for the pharma and life science business as well. Of course, it has a major advantage for the BCOs that for the moment we see in a lot of ports, but also that's why we started the project, that a lot of companies for picking up a container, it is hard, or the information for picking up a container is transferred several times. Specifically with the digitized certified pickup, it is actually within a blockchain that the containers can be picked up. So only the party who is really the party that has the authorization to pick up the container will receive the final key to pick up that container. This is, of course, very important for the pharmaceutical business because you have quite high sensitive and high priced products inside that container. So it's a major advantage also for this sector.
I have one final question from my side. Leave it to any of you to take it. We're talking about global trade disruptions these days. Started with the pandemic, moved on very quickly to the Suez Canal blockage before we knew it. We are seeing second, third waves of the pandemic in various countries. That is also impacting trade because you have lockdowns and also impacting business now. So what is a way, what would be your suggestion to maybe immunize? I like this word because we're talking about COVID vaccine. So how do you immunize your supply chain against it? Can we think better? What can we do better to keep the business going? How would you plan it better? What would you do different?
Well, I think indeed one of the major advantages, and we have N here present today, is that containers can be unloaded and loaded as close to the port operations as possible. That would be a good solution, but because also for the shipping companies, where it is very important to have a turnaround time of the containers very fast for the moment, this could be a very good solution. But also going more land inwards or Europe inwards, because indeed Port of Antwerp is also a very good port when it's related to hinterland connections, also for barge, for train. We see more setups that inland container terminals also organize that empty container depots could be set up at those locations as well. So it would bring off a bit the pressure on a lot of the container terminals there is today by bringing them more inland. I think that could be a good solution as well. But mainly, and that is one of the major advantages of Port of Antwerp as well, because we have those logistics operations so close to the container operations that the turnaround times of the containers can go up quite fast. Also very important for reefer containers.
I would like to add something to that, Malini. I think also working in a multi-customer environment, a multi-customer warehouse helps. You see that the different healthcare customers saw a lot of influence in their total supply chain, but very different in different product groups. Some product groups had to stay in the warehouse for much longer than normally because the surgical procedures were not going through, and that's why some of the others, like protective material, were having a very high throughput. So having multi-customer and multi-product companies within your warehouse helps to ensure that they all have a flexibility.
One example from today's news was that, actually it's yesterday's news, but an other Indian example, and it's not linked to pharma, is who would have imagined JLR, Jaguar Land Rover, had to shut their plants because of semiconductor parts not available. That's the extent at which companies are globalized, and we're talking about global value chains and disruption in global value chains. So what you're saying, Anne, makes a lot of sense, that you need to have hubs across the world. And of course, for Europe, as you would have seen through this session, Port of Antwerp is an attractive location. So on that note, I don't think there are any more questions. Very shy audience today. But okay, we'll send across the recording, and I'd like to thank our speakers and also a very patient audience for listening. And if you have any questions, do write back to us, and we'd be happy to get them responded to. Since we're in the virtual days and we cannot do more than just show you or speak to you through this digital medium, pictures and videos, we'd just like to leave you with a video of the Port of Antwerp, how the cargo is handled and specific to pharmaceuticals. So I'll say goodbye. Thank you very much for joining us. And Sarah, maybe you can show us the video.
Highly sensitive medical cargo requires extra care. The three major deep-sea terminal operators within the Port of Antwerp, PSA, Antwerp, MPET, and DP World, all have put a series of procedures in place that guarantee the safest handling of your sensitive cargo. Let's explore the unique flow of a refrigerated container or reefer when exported from one of these deep-sea terminals. Before cargo even comes into the picture, the empty reefer is cleaned and thoroughly inspected. The cooling unit is the beating heart of the reefer container. It is subject to a series of tests during a pre-trip inspection, or PTI, Only full completion of these tests qualifies the container for use. Each loaded container, inbound for the terminal, requires pre-registration in the terminal's truck announcement systems. You can record container number, truck registration, and driver identification in a secure online dashboard. The terminals instantly receive this information and await the container's arrival. When a truck shows up at the terminal gate, cameras read the container number and make high-resolution images of the exterior for visual inspection. When the driver enters their truck appointment reference, all data is checked against the information in the truck announcement system. The truck is only granted access to the terminal when its data matches the booking details. Once inside one of the heavily secured container terminals, the driver parks the truck. They release the twist locks and unplug the power of the cooling unit. After indicating that the container is ready for pickup, a straddle carrier or automated stacking crane immediately takes the container from the truck chassis and moves it to a dedicated stacking zone on the terminal yard. This flow shows the arrival on terminal of a reefer container by truck, but our terminals are also accessible by barge and by rail, connecting your cold supply chain with the rest of the world. All deep-sea terminals within the Port of Antwerp have state-of-the-art reefer racks. After pickup from one of the incoming transport modes, the straddle carrier or automatic stacking crane carefully positions the reefer container in a predefined slot in the reefer rack. As soon as the container is stacked, the dedicated reefer inspector gets notified on his device and heads towards the container. He connects the container's cooling system to the power grid and already performs a first check, comparing temperature and humidity against the booking data of that container. From here on out, the reefer gets monitored at least 3 times a day during its stay on terminal. Should any irregularities occur, detection is swift and immediate action is discussed between terminal and shipping line. Potential issues get resolved by our 24/7 on-site reefer response team. If a container's unplug time somehow exceeds the reefer's specifications, our monitoring teams are alerted immediately and automatically. When a deep-sea vessel gets loaded, straddle carriers bring out the containers to the key cranes. These giant cranes stack them in the bay of the vessel, following a pre-agreed planning and loading sequence. Planners, reefer inspectors, straddle carrier drivers, and crane operators all coordinate on the highest level for a streamlined delivery to the quay. The smooth route from unplugging in the reefer rack to arrival underneath the key crane for loading assures the absolute minimum unplugging time. Once the reefer gets lifted from the quay, OCR cameras automatically register the outgoing container number and make a new set of images for visual inspection. On board the vessel, the reefers are once again prioritized and plugged in, ready for their journey overseas. This export flow works perfectly in reverse as well, for import of refrigerated cargo. The key cranes register the incoming reefers and acknowledge the arrival in the system. Reefers are then plugged and monitored in the reefer racks on the yard. Automatic notification systems enable the cargo owner to carefully track the arrival and status of their containers on terminal. This makes it easy to arrange pickup from the terminal by truck, barge, or rail, delivering their temperature-controlled goods to the European hinterland. All of Antwerp's deep-sea terminals have these procedures in place for your temperature-sensitive cargo, making sure that unplug time is minimized. We are proud to say that we are GDP ready. Highly sensitive medical cargo requires extra care. The